We're back. My name is Jesse Romero. We've got AJ Benjamin, author of the Tan Book, When the Sun Frees You. You can pick up that book at tanbook.com. Talk about a relevant book for parents, for mom and dad, for people today. It's a Catholic man's journey of healing from same-sex attraction. So we got cut off. We had a hard break, AJ. You're talking about, do you consider yourself an ex-gay? And I also want to ask you, when you talk about the fluidity of sexual orientation, what does that mean? So are you an ex-gay? And what does fluidity of sexual orientation, what does that mean?
Well, thank you. Thank you for both of those questions. The first, just to finish off the ex-gay label, I don't use that because I don't identify myself as gay to begin with. I identify myself as a man who has experienced same-sex attraction. So I don't use the gay label. So by association, I also don't use the ex-gay label because that's a label based on another label. What I do say is that I have experienced same-sex attraction and have experienced a change in the level of that attraction, which goes into your next questions about the fluidity of one's sexual orientation or attractions. A lot of what's out there is really trying to, a lot of the rhetoric that we're hearing is really trying to assert the idea that when we have attractions or predominant attractions to one gender or another, that is somehow permanent and that's part of who we are. What the idea of fluidity says is that at certain times in our lives, certain people may feel more or less attracted to people of the same sex. For some of us, that would be a very pervasive thing that doesn't change much. For others of us, we really might not experience that much at all, or we might experience a little bit. Like a lot of times you hear that happens during the teenage years and things like that when the hormones are racing, and you may find that those attractions to people of the same sex. So what fluidity means is that it's that our orientation or attraction to people is not necessarily fixed in stone for every person, and that people can experience changes in that, and they can even do certain things that may influence whether or not that attraction is there or not. This is not to say that people don't experience same-sex attraction, but it is to say that it may not be as immutable or unchangeable as once thought.
So you're kind of advocating the very unpopular, politically incorrect position that orientation change is possible. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I have seen it happen with myself. I know lots of other people that have had it happen, and it's kind of almost. They weren't so tragic. It would be almost funny when you hear people say, "No, that's not possible." And I'm thinking, well, I'm here and I'm telling you it is, and they say, "Well, no, there's something wrong with you. You're just suppressing it, or whatever." And I said, well, no, and I'm not the only one. I can tell you, I'm not just suppressing it because I've seen true, meaningful change, even to the point where the content of my dreams has shifted, and that's not something I have conscious control over. So I know that there has been a change, and I am very happily married. I've been married for almost 20 years. I have 3 beautiful children, and I just thank God that he got me on this path that he got me on, and I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, life's been absolutely incredible. I've absolutely enjoyed my marriage, and my wife is truly my best friend. And it is possible. Am I saying that it can happen for everyone to the same degree? No one can guarantee that, but it can happen for at least some of us. And if it can happen for some of us, then that is an option that people should be allowed to explore.
You can pick up the book When the Sun Frees You by Tan Books. The author, AJ Benjamin, I've got him on tanbooks.com. This is a very relevant book for the times that we live in right now. So, AJ, you're not talking about, as some would say, praying the gay away, correct?
No, not at all. Not at all. Spirituality, of course, is a big part of any kind of meaningful change. And when we talk about changing ourselves and our behaviors and our thoughts, that's really the essence of the Christian message, that Christ has come for what the gospel called metanoia, a complete change of heart. And whatever you're struggling with, whether it's your sexual attractions, some people have difficulty with anger. Some people have difficulty with manipulating other people. Some people have difficulty with eating disorders, with drugs, with alcohol. All of that is subject to Christ, and all of that can be healed. Does that mean you just pray? You just pray and it goes away? No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. I've heard of people having that happen. That was not the case with me. And although Christ was the center of my healing, there was other work I had to do. I had to do my homework too. I had to look at my own life and my own failings and my own dispositions and thoughts, and actually make changes to them. But the prayer is an essential component. I think if you talk to anybody, I think that's one of the reasons why groups like Alcoholics Anonymous are so successful. Because although we don't, God is not going to take that away per se. His strength is required. People who want to do any kind of meaningful change really have to have God as their spiritual center, Jesus Christ as their spiritual center, to make that change happen. Does that make sense?
Yes. AJ, I just want to clarify something. So, you made the point that, and I just want to make sure I heard correctly, that sex is fluid, but sexual orientation isn't, correct?
No, I think it would be the opposite.
The
your
opposite.
Sex is
Okay.
your sex is what you're biologically determined to be, which is male or female. Sexual orientation and attraction, that may be more fluid in some people.
Got it. So I had
thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate you clarifying that. Maybe I didn't say it clearly. So
because somebody just posted, and I just wanted to make sure that that's what they heard. So I just wanted to make sure you clarified it, and you did. Again, what about conversion therapy that we hear a lot about in the media? I know a lot of people in the left don't like it. A lot of blue states don't like it. It seems to work. I know it was started by Dr. Joseph Nicolosi back in Encino, California, back in the 80s. What's your take on conversion therapy?
Well, a lot of the huge problem with that is that what you're talking about with Nicolosi and people like that is this very specific form of therapy with very specific principles that are used. This has often been used and misused by other people. You hear about people, getting the shock treatments and the pornography exposure and things like that. That is all often lumped in with conversion therapy, and also the name itself, conversion therapy, tends to have this idea that it's a religious thing. It's kind of like the pray the gay away thing. The other therapy, the other names for it that seem to be a little bit more descriptive and more accurate are either reparative therapy or restorative therapy. Now, at the root of this is, of course, that it is not a gay affirmative therapy, and I think that's what a lot of people on the left object to, because they object to anything that is not gay affirmative, which means that you have to accept that you are gay or you're not going to be happy. That's what gay affirmative therapy is. That's really the only thing that's acceptable by the elites, in our society today. So if we try to say, well, we can say that we affirm you as a person, but we can offer you some choices in the way you want to explore your sexuality and your lifestyle, we're not going to necessarily say that you have to embrace a gay identity. That's really what people object to more, and the whole idea of conversion therapy is kind of a whole separate issue. But to answer your question in short, I have used the principles of it, which I'm going to call reparative therapy or restorative therapy. And although I've never experienced the therapy itself, I have found that the principles worked for me in integrating my own self-identity as a man.
AJ, I think that the root cause of all sexual sin, hetero or homosexual sin, is that primary sin of lust mentioned in Proverbs 6:16. I think again, it plays along with our fallen nature, and some just fall for the heterosexual lust, or some fall for the homosexual lust. But how well is the church ministering to Catholics with same-sex attraction? And what would you say to a man who's struggling with sexual orientation or sexual identity?
Okay, the first question when we talked about the root cause, I would say it's lust fueled by envy, because a lot of times it's our own insecurities as men that drive us to behave the way we do, and that's not necessarily limited to same-sex attraction.
Right.
Men,
Right.
for instance, who are promiscuous, who are addicted to pornography, there's reasons for that, like same-sex attraction. That doesn't develop in a vacuum. You're not born a porn addict. You're not born somebody who's promiscuous. You're not born an adulterer. Okay, that happens. Something that happens in our development, in our own insecurity within ourselves. Specifically with same-sex attraction, I think it has to do much more with envy. We look at other men and we see what we don't have, and we want to take that. We want to kind of take that, have another man give that to us, what was found lacking in ourselves. And what surprised me too is this is not a new idea. I recently read a book by St. Peter Damian called The Book of Gomorrah, which I highly recommend. And he's tackling this issue among the clergy 1,000 years ago. And he says the exact same thing. He says that any man who is looking at another man with lust should really look at himself and see what he finds lacking in himself and what he wants to get from
AJ,
another man.
Hard break, brother. Thank you very much for coming on. Get the book, When the Sun Frees You. 10 books. AJ Benjamin, When the Sun Frees You.